It's not about coming and saying, this is what I'm going to do. It's actually doing it. It's taking action. It's being that modeled behavior, because that's what good leadership is. And it's okay, because it's still gonna, like, life's still gonna go on even if it doesn't happen. So first, it's like recognizing like it's gonna move on. What I tend to do, as you know, Daniel, I'm kind of a Pilates person, and it takes me about less than 2 minutes to do a Pilates roll down, which is basically I start and I kind of roll my body down, and at the same time I breathe, and it's reconnecting my breath to my body. And what that does is I have a Pilates instructor that says, don't worry about anything unless that's where your feet are. So I remember when I do my roll down and my breath that I am here, this is my experience, and it slows time down for a second, and it slows down your heartbeat, and it reconnects your body with your experience that you're having right now. And it takes less than 2 minutes. And you could do it at standing at your desk. You can do it sitting at your desk. Everyone needs 2 minutes, like you can coach somebody in 2 minutes. You can definitely breathe in 2 minutes.
And so what I'm hearing from you is also a focus on the physical, because too often we are sitting, we're in meetings, it's cerebral instead of the movement. And we are built to move.
Yes.
And we need to be able to move in ways, and that does so much good in so many ways for us as well.
Absolutely. Movement, I think, is probably the best thing that we can do for our bodies and our mind to help create energy to then cut against burnout, but then also to move past that burnout into a belonging state, which is how can I stop thinking more about what my experience is, but how am I making sure that the experience of people around me is better? Because that's what good leaders do.
Okay, so I'm going to play this out, and I'm going to go a little extreme, but I want your reactions as we do this. So if I'm a leader and I'm hearing, we've been talking for 30 minutes thus far. If I go back to my team and say, okay, everybody, we want to build and strengthen belonging. So we're going to be doing creative stuff, and we're going to be focusing on movement. Now, admitted that's not necessarily but that's essentially what we're saying. What are ways that a manager or leader can translate that so that people are like, oh, that's a good point. How do you communicate this?
Oh, well, I would love a manager to come after that and say that. I mean, that would be ideal. It's never happened in my life. But I would honestly say the easiest thing that I would recommend is, think of little things that you're going to do already in your day that you can turn into a movement activity. Okay. So, I have a team meeting and we're virtual. How different would it be is if we had a virtual team meeting and you said, hey, I'm going to go on a walk. Anyone can join me if they would like. This is not going to be a Zoom call. This is just us talking, and I'm going to go on a walk around the neighborhood. So we're like physically moving and walking around and talking. So it's like what we used to do is a walk and talks when we were all in the office. Well, this can be a virtual walk and talk. I mean, that's the best thing to do. And that's going to already encourage. It's not about coming and saying, this is what I'm going to do. It's actually doing it. It's taking action. It's being that modeled behavior, because that's what good leadership is.
Even if it's uncomfortable for the leader, because there are certain norms that we think of as a leader. I don't say this, or I do say what you're suggesting is to kind of begin to break that mold. Absolutely. And to suggest and do things that are maybe more traditionally outside of the typical workplace ideal, because either it's hybrid, virtual. Okay, we need to live that way and live and lead differently.
Yeah. I think being a leader, we should always be a little uncomfortable. I mean, that just shows that you have some authenticity. You're trying different things. You're portraying the the behavior that you want your people to have, you know. So like, I don't think I think trying new things and going out is part of that leadership experience, and it's part of being uncomfortable, but also remembering that everyone's uncomfortable. That's part of the human experience in itself. And so I think being a leader, you can tap into these really cool opportunities for you to be uncomfortable, but then also share that feeling with others as well, but also showing it, you know. That's how you
Yeah.
start to spark belonging. Yeah, absolutely.
As folks are listening to this, feel free to chime in with your own questions on these topics or others. Feel free to just enter them in as you wish. Tim, let's talk for a moment about identity, because oftentimes that plays a part in terms of, do I feel like I belong, or do I feel like I don't belong? And how to invite, how to help people look at their own authentic self and to show up in a way that they can then contribute in meaningful ways. Otherwise, they can easily feel not included. How does somebody go about the process of kind of reflecting on themselves? And then the other part is, how can a manager help shape and influence in positive ways that identity as well? So both angles, themselves and a manager or leader, to help them with this
Yeah.
identity question.
Oh man, when you were talking about that, the first thing that I went back to was the first time that I ever got a 360. That was the first time that I started to do some of that own self-reflection. So now, as someone who facilitates 360s, I always say this is the best gift you will ever receive, because feedback is a gift, right? And so that was the first thing that I went to is, you know, if you haven't gotten a 360, I mean, ask your manager to have one. And I'm not any of them. I mean, we have great ones here. But like, I think that would be like my first step of like recognizing my own self-awareness, and then asking also my direct reports, you know, opening a conversation with them on how they're feeling, as well as a 360 is a great way to start if you're not a big feeler, or comfortable talking about feelings as a leader. A 360 is a great place to start there. I would say identity, you know, this is something that we didn't really talk about in business when I first started working, you know, and it's really hard to, as a leader, to be like, wow, I have to worry about, you know, my responsibilities, and then I have to worry about everyone else's, you know, like that's really hard. And so the first place that I go is thinking about, what would it be if somebody cared the way I wanted them to care about me? And going through like your own self and having some of that self-reflection, being like, when was there a time that I didn't feel comfortable? And then start to identify, is that happening inside of the organization? Because it's probably something related to that person's identity or who they show up as. We also can look at data. We know that that burnout and belonging is affected to our BIPOC community more than any other community inside of an organization. So knowing that we already have people through data that is telling us that they are more likely to feel burnout and belonging. So let's also make sure that we are aware of the data and other things that we know as leaders, who are the most susceptible to these challenges because of their own identity, that they didn't choose to be themselves, or they didn't choose. We know none of us had a choice.
Right. It's how we arrive into this world, and then we work through this, and it's for others to then help support and recognize as well as we do it together.
Yes.
And what I'm also hearing from you is, none of this is an individual sport. It is a team sport, to be able to then be effective, not only in the organizational world, but at life, and to be able to recognize that this combining this interactivity is a positive thing. And it's actually a solution to help us become better ourselves,
Absolutely.
as well as the organization.
Absolutely. Ego sees problems, consciousness sees solutions, right? And that's basically what we're going for right there. is that as this is the new way that we are going to be having to lead, because the generations that are next and next and next are talking more and more about this. They are smarter than I was, they're better at it than we are. And so it's now our turn to upskill our behavior so that we can better communicate and be better leaders about talking about belonging and making sure that we are the better stewards of the business, better stewards of people, and better stewards of the earth. Like that is the challenge of this new leadership paradox.